Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. My name is Russ Smith, number 114, retired. I'm sorry I can't be with you all today. In remembering one of our brother firefighters and my best friend, Don. Now, I've known him since about 1978 when I bought the house across the street from him. Bought it from Don Chardelli, who was Chief 2 at the time. And he wouldn't sell me the house unless I joined the fire department. So I agreed, but he owed me a roof. So 2 months after I moved in, the crew from Station 1 shows up, and some other stations, and they put a roof on my house. They show up about 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, and that doggone roof was up by noon. And I was just amazed at how they all worked together, and they included me right along with them. And I thought, geez, I got to get to know these fellas, it's a good crew. And that's the first time I ever met Don. So after that, and some finagling with my then wife, I got to thank Jan Gaslin and his wife for talking her into my ex-wife into letting me join. Anyway, so it was a whole group effort, and I finally got on. And by that time, I was working nights. And in those days, rookie training was, hard to come by because I was working nights. So on Saturday mornings, Don always came and told me I had to show up for work detail. And that's where he showed me how all the trucks worked, what was on them, how to maintain them, how the equipment worked, everything else. That was my education. The rest of it was they told me, just get on a truck and stand by the driver. Observe. You'll see how it goes. And then as time goes, you'll be able to help. And, picking up hose is a big part of it. So anyway, that was how my training got started. But Don was right there next to me the whole time working with me. Now, we go back to talking about, being a rookie, and I didn't know what was going on. So I'll tell you about my first truck ride. I was on ladder 1, and I was standing there, and somebody says, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "Well, I don't know what to do." And they said, "Well, get on a truck." So I jumped on a truck, and turns out I was on, bucket 1, 5-man crew, and I was the 6th guy. Nobody said anything until I got back. But that was my very first truck run on the fire department. And I learned a lot about it. Well, it was explained to me, how it really works, and I figured it out right away. Don was always there for me and supporting me and encouraging me and teaching me. He helped me through my first truck rides, my first working fires. He counseled me after my first fatal fire. He helped me through all of that. He inspired me to be not just a better firefighter, but also to be a better man. He had his opinions, and he made them well known. You didn't have to ask him very often what they were. They were right there in front of you. I might not have agreed with him all the time, but I never ignored him. It was hard to do. He was always honest and sincere about what he said and what he believed, and about how he did things and why he did them. He was consistent, and I almost never heard him admit to being wrong. Almost never. Friends don't become friends overnight. It takes time, experiences, and a lot of laughter. A lot of beer. We rode a lot of trucks together, played a lot of cribbage, did a lot of fishing, a little bit of catching, and usually there was a beer or two along the way. I think Don knew of all of my secrets and what I thought about and how I thought about it. and all the stupid things I had done and said. I sure hope he took that with him. I don't think Don has ever met a stranger. He always had or could find something in common ground to talk to anybody. And it didn't matter the time of day or the situation. We'd be at 3 o'clock in the morning sitting on a truck, and there'd be Don standing in the doorway talking to somebody we had just, saved their house from a light switch. And he would be chatting away with them. And we'd be, Well, then he'd get back on the truck eventually, and we'd all be riding back home, and he'd be telling us about the conversation, and all we could do was just laugh the whole way. It was fun. Yeah, and if you ever rode a truck with Don, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, goodness gracious, and every time, it was always different. There was always a different story, a different person, and the stories were almost always hilarious. Now, we all trusted our lives to each other, and that just goes kind of without saying. But when Don was running the fire, he said go, we went. We knew he'd be there right with us. Most of the time, he was on top of us, telling us we weren't going fast enough. And if we made some mistakes, he wasn't afraid to let us know after the fire, But we'd get through it. And he was a good cusser. I mean, he could tell you in no uncertain terms what it was that we had done wrong, why it shouldn't have ever gone that way, and how to do it the right way. Yeah. But when he was done, he was done. That was it. Now, we'd ride back to the station, chuckle a little bit about the fire and the escapade, have a beer. And that was it. Never heard about it again. It was a lesson learned. Usually not forgotten. Now, we could sit around for hours just telling stories about laughing and blaming each other, or just telling stories, and we'd be laughing so hard we could hardly remember. And we would be blaming each other for all the things that that had happened to us. Yeah, and it was all never our fault. But, just like the time we had to go get the pig for his 40th birthday party. Now, we had to drive all the way to New Prague, which was about 30 minutes. And we left about 10 in the morning. Well, how are we to know that we'd get hooked up with the New Prague Fire Department? And they wouldn't let us go home. And we sat there in their bar until the 6 o'clock siren went off. Well, we finally made it home. But it sure made for a long, long night of that slow roasting pig. Yeah. Now, there's just too many stories to remember. And to tell them without Don being here to correct me, or me to correct him, or even just remember them, it's just not as much fun. Yeah, talk about fishing. Well, I remember the time we were fishing on the Dead Sea there, Mille Lacs in the early 80s. And we were trolling around and fishing around in this bay with a bunch of big rocks under the water. Finally, Don snagged one. So we were backing the boat up and trying to get his line free, and the doggone thing took off. Holy smoly, man, he had a fish on there. It took a few minutes, but he got it in, and we got it on the stringer, and it was like a 25, 26-inch walleye. I bet it went about 3 pounds. Huge. We'd never, either one of us ever seen anything that big. So he got his handy-dandy little steel stringer out with the hooks, hooked that walleye up, slipped him over the side. Man, we went fishing for the big ones. Wow, I don't know how long we spent out there. Well, a couple more hours anyway. And it was time to go in. So he pulls up the stringer. We pull in our lines, and he pulls up the stringer, and the goddamn thing's empty. That steel hook had rusted right off. I tell you, he had the biggest brown eyes, so full of tears. I had never seen him cry before or since. Oh, he was just devastated. I thought he was teasing me, and I was laughing like hell. But he was just, beside himself. Well, there just wasn't enough beer to console him. That was the first and only time I ever seen him cry. Oh, I think, we could talk stories, but like I said, it's not as much fun if you're not here telling them with me, because he always had a different version, and it was usually better than mine. Well, I can't think of anybody with a bigger heart than Don. He was always willing to help anyone who asked him, do almost anything he could to help him. I can't remember how many projects he worked on over the years for other people on his time, on our time. And he was just always wanting to do things and do them right. Just about everyone, what? Oh, and what? He worked on projects not just for me, but for everyone. We even traveled to other stations. It was always a trip, always an adventure. Now BFD was our family. It was a big one, and I hope that much hasn't changed. Well, brother, I'll see you again, but I'm not gonna. But I'm gonna wait as long as I can. You're always in my heart. I think of you often, and I can still hear your advice. My memories are all good, and you will always be on my mind. I love you, brother. I love you all.